Welcome back to the Peristyle Podcast / Inside Troy YouTube / USCFootball.com / a bunch of different things. I'm your host, Chris Trevino. Me and Connor are marching through our positional previews for 2025 USC Spring Camp. We've already done quarterbacks. We've done running backs. Today, we are going to knock out one of the most exciting positions on the team, wide receivers. Connor, when I say USC 2025 wide receivers, what is first coming to your mind?
My first impression for this group, Chris, legit top-end talent who should play a lot more this season. The two high-end guys who I'm sure USC fans know their names, which we'll get to in a second, but not much depth with this group. Do they have enough right now to replace all the pieces they lost? I think you could make an argument for like a lowercase n no, but they certainly brought back the two most important guys who they needed to bring back in Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane, so that is, of course, a good sign.
Yeah, lowercase n no, but capital YES on yes, exciting for this group. And let's just jump into it because they're losing, I mean, depending how you look at it, they're losing a lot because you're losing Zachariah Branch, you're losing Deuce Robinson, now Florida State, Zachariah Branch at Georgia, Kyron Hudson off to Penn State, Kyle Ford, graduation, the Las Vegas Bowl hero, and then Charles Ross, one of their low-end depth guys, enter the transfer portal as well. But you're losing essentially three starters off that group and a first-team All-American as a freshman, Zachariah Branch. We know there was some, didn't quite have the same juice in 2024, excuse me. And then Kyle Ford, who was a very dependable kind of reserve backup second unit guy who maybe plays in 2024. So looking at that group, Connor, what's standing out? Because you do take some losses there.
You do, and I've talked about this on past podcasts. I think you can overcome some of these losses, but in totality, it is a lot. Deuce Robinson is the guy I think USC will miss the most. If you could pair him with Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon going into next season, I just think that makes the offense so much more dynamic. Zachariah Branch, for some of his faults last season, he was really good as a decoy. Of course, you want your five-star player not to be known for being a decoy, but he did take a lot of attention away from other players, and without him on the roster, that will certainly affect how teams game plan against USC. So they aren't huge losses in individual cases, but like Kyron Hudson was a reliable receiver, not some fantastic All-American guy, but he was a reliable option. And Zachariah Branch had a high ceiling that he didn't quite get to. Deuce Robinson made some nice plays too. USC's losing some guys where it will hurt, but they did the most important thing, which was retain Lemon and Lane. So that is significant. But the losses, I don't think it's like, USC has they're going to be fine at the receiver spot. They've lost some pieces who were important. Kyle Ford, another guy who, wasn't maybe great, but solid. Like, I think they have a little bit of work to do in the April portal.
Yeah, it just seems crazy to me. I'm not saying you're wrong, but like you're saying Deuce Robinson, probably the biggest loss of that group. But it just seems crazy to me because like Zachariah Branch as a freshman was like the first team All-American true freshman in USC history. That's just crazy to me that we're talking about it like now in 2025 because Zachariah Branch struggled with route running, struggled with his hands, did not look the same explosive guy that we saw as a true freshman. And Branch and Deuce Robinson, from an optics standpoint, very bad look for USC just from, they were both the number one players in their position in that 2023 group, Zachariah Branch, number one wide receiver, Deuce Robinson, number one tight end, if you want to argue the validity of him being a tight end, what have you. But yeah, those are two guys you don't have. They were just sophomores and they were contributors. But I think that's a good segue into the returning group because, they lost a lot. But USC is returning a lot in the wide receiver department as well in terms of their high-end starters. Let's not cut the chase. Sophomore Makai Lemon and then rising juniors Jacoby Lane, their top two weapons from last year from a statistical standpoint. Lemon led the team with 52 receptions, 754 yards, 3 touchdowns, while Lane had 43 receptions for 525 yards and a whopping 12 touchdowns. A lot of those at the end of the season, top 3 in the Big Ten, top 5 in the nation. You also have senior Jay Fair coming back, redshirt freshman Xavier Jordan, redshirt senior Josiah Zamora, who was put on scholarship last year, so he is in this group, and then redshirt senior Jaden Richardson, who was a transfer last year but did not contribute much, only had 1 reception for 19 yards. But Connor, the story of this group is obviously one of the best duos in the country they showed last year. Let's see if they can make it even more on the national stage in Lemon Lane.
Makai Lemon was awesome, especially towards the end of the season, and Jacoby Lane certainly came on strong too. I mean, his Las Vegas Bowl performance was incredible. Lemon was probably the most consistent receiver for USC, so getting him back was huge. And I think the biggest thing with these guys, Chris, so Jacoby Lane played 483 offensive snaps last season. Makai Lemon played 410. When you look at the premier wide receivers in college football, like I was looking at guys on Texas and Ohio State, like those top-end guys are playing double that amount of snaps in a season. So I believe that Lane and Lemon aren't going to come off the field at all much next season. They are going to be out there for the vast majority of offensive plays. The rotations that we saw USC have the last couple seasons, while they'll still rotate, it's going to be totally different. And I believe, and I think Lane and Lemon are just going to play a heck of a lot more than they did last season, which you'd hope would lead to greater production. We'll see now that they're clearly those top 2 guys. Defenses will be paying a lot more attention to them, but they're going to get a lot more opportunities. And we've seen what they did in limited opportunities at times in some of these games. They were awesome. So that is really exciting. The fact that I think the offense will be tailored to those 2 receivers, and we've seen how talented they can be. They are both breakout candidates.
And they're both different types of receivers. You know, Jacoby Lane, 6'4", 6'5", can probably jump to 10 feet in the air. Big body receiver, still needs to be more consistent as, you know, a guy between the 20s, because he was 12 touchdowns, was a red zone guy. And then Makai Lemon, just kind of a do-all guy. Not many touchdowns, but, you know, also a kick returner for this team. Explosive, makes big plays, good hands, a dependable guy on third down, can make the big play as well, can do a little bit of everything. But you're right. You know, one of the big issues that people had last year with the offense, or many with running the ball, quarterback play, what have you, is that they rotated too much. And we had heard that there was frustration in that room because if you're trying to keep everyone happy, you ended up no one being happy. So I think that's the big thing people want to see is Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, pretty much on the field for every snap, and it feels like it's setting up for that. They do need to add a little bit more depth, but I don't think they're going to kind of bring in another like alpha level receiver. This feels like the Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, and friends show when we talk about the wide receivers.
If they did bring in another alpha, I would actually be okay with that. I just think the more really talented players you can get on this team, the better, but it wouldn't be for a need necessarily because they already have these 2 guys. Makai Lemon, Chris, last season, he's just the guy like you want to have on your team. Goes over the middle, takes the big hits, is lightning fast. We saw what he could do as a return man. I think for me, he's probably outside of maybe Wayman Jordan, he's the player I'm most excited for this upcoming season just because he's realizing that 5-star potential right in front of our eyes. So very much looking forward to what he can do. And then with Lane, you mentioned being more consistent. He had 5 games last season with 2 or fewer catches out of the 13. He was a little bit too much of a boomer bust player. And if he can develop into a more consistent guy who catches at least 4 to 5 passes every game and is just more involved in things, that could go a long way to helping USC. And I think with the way the room is set up, he's going to have to be more consistent or else USC is just not going to be very good because they don't have too many options right now.
Yeah, not too many options. You said Wayman Jordan most excited with Makai Lemon. Is that offense or total team?
For me, I think total team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like your confidence in making these declarations. Connor. That's
in March.
Yeah, in March. I love it. And you mentioned not a ton of like help around them, at least established help coming off 2024, which kind of circles us back to our other returners. The most interesting ones to me being the senior Jay Fair, who arrived from Auburn, didn't have that much of an impact in his first season. 8 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown. You know, that's kind of not the numbers I was expecting when he came over. And then you have the redshirt freshman, Xavier Jordan. Those are kind of the 2 most interesting ones of the returners. Xavier Jordan did not play at all. And he essentially was a hard redshirt. You know, he came along. He was early enrollee last year, came along at the end of spring, made some nice catches in the spring showcase, spring game, whatever. And then just kind of like fell off, was immediately put on scout, and we didn't really see or hear from him. Suited up for the Las Vegas Bowl, but did not record a reception or anything like that. I don't know how many snaps he played, but Xavier Jordan, that's a guy maybe you're penciling in to have a little bit of more of a role, and we'll get into the new guys coming in after this. But Jay Fair is kind of the one where like you want to see more out of Jay Fair in 2025 to help supplement your two potential superstars in Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane.
They desperately need another slot receiver to emerge, and I believe it's going to be Fair. Xavier Jordan will battle with Jay Fair, so don't rule him out. But unless another slot guy is added in the spring window, which wouldn't be out of the question, I think USC could do that for sure. To me, it looks like Jay Fair is in line to be that guy who will play alongside Makai Lemon on the other end, or maybe he'll line up next to him. But Makai Lemon is that established, really, really good slot receiver, Mr. Reliable, everything you're looking for. The depth outside of that, though, it isn't really there. And Fair, who only had the 8 catches last season, like you said, Chris, he could emerge into that role. And I don't know if Xavier Jordan's necessarily ready for that role. So I do think it's going to be a big camp in the spring for Jay Fair because USC's going to need him.
I'm going to kick one question to you as we talk about these guys. Could we have 2,000-yard receivers? Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane? What are your odds on that? What are your percentage odds on that?
I said last year that there was a chance of that, and that didn't age well. So I think it's a chance, but I don't know if you're going to get 2. It's just really hard to get 2, especially playing in the Big Ten when those defenses are built the way they're built and you're going up against teams who will really make your life difficult more often than not. It's not like the Pac-12 where it's quarterbacks and offense and you're beating Cal 50-49. It's a little bit different now. So it's possible, but I think they'll get to 1. I think Makai Lemon can get there. I don't know if Jacoby Lane will get the volume of catches needed to get to 1,000 yards, but does that really matter if you're catching 12 touchdowns again? I don't think so. So it's possible, but I'd be a little bit surprised if they got 2.
Okay. With that, I think we can move on to the new faces. We only have 2 now. Again, just a reminder, when we're talking about these positional previews, we're not talking about the full class of like incoming freshmen. We're only talking about the ones that are arriving in the spring. USC did sign 3 receivers, but only 1 is going to be here in the spring. So that's the one we are focusing on. And I think we're going to do these for fall camp, Connor. So we'll get the full scope with those new faces when we do these for fall camp. But right now, just focusing on the faces that are being added in the spring. You have 1 transfer pickup in junior Prince Strawn out of Boise State. Essentially your replacement for Deuce Robinson, 6'5", 211 pounds, 37 receptions for 578 yards and 3 touchdowns over his 2 years at Boise State. And then you have a true freshman pickup in Corey Sims out of St. Louis, Missouri, 6'3", 205 pounds, the number 82 wide receiver in the 2025 cycle, a 3-star prospect who me and Gerard really like. We got to see him a little bit when he's out here on the 7-on-7 circuit, but a lot of size being added to this room in the spring, Connor, to go along with Jacoby Lane. But Corey Sims, Prince Strawn, more bulky guys, not the lanky guys like Jacoby Lane.
Strawn is tall at 6'5", so he could be a guy who plays on he will be a guy who plays on the outside alongside Lane. But he is built nicely, and he's not just that lanky receiver. He there's a little bit more to him. To me, Chris, he's another breakout candidate because he's only been playing football, Strawn, since 2019. He grew up in the Bahamas. Football is relatively new to him.
Yeah.
He had a solid season at Boise State in his second year in college last season, catching the 37 passes for 578 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I look at him, and I think he comes to USC, and he has an established role. He's going to be that other outside receiver alongside Jacoby Lane, and I don't really know who else is even challenging him for that number 2 outside receiver spot.
And remember, he played in an offense that was going running back with Ashton Genty, so not a ton of passes being thrown for their passing attack. And now you're coming to USC where Lincoln Riley, they want to throw the ball. I know, people hope they run the ball more, but they are going to throw the ball. So Prince Strawn could absolutely have kind of a breakout campaign on a national scene. He's a guy who, as you mentioned, hasn't played a lot of football, still learning the ins and outs of playing receiver, but a lot of physical tools that you like at 6'5", and 211 pounds, and has some, high-level football under his belt at Boise State. Good program, good offense, just not throwing the ball that much.
I gave him too many receiving yards. He had 304 last year. I added his total.
Yeah, those are his career yards. Sorry.
No problem. Just misread the doc. So 25 receptions for 304 yards. Doesn't exactly pop the same way, but that is beside the fact. He is a guy who has a lot of potential because he came to play football so late. And USC added this player, Strawn, with the hopes of coming in and playing immediately. Like I said earlier, who do you think, Chris, is really going to push for that other outside receiver spot? Like Romero Eisen, maybe, who gets there in the summer? I don't know if they have someone else on the roster who can play that spot. Like, there'll be smaller guys who will line up on the outside, but you need someone of his stature to play alongside Lane. And I think Strawn's going to play a ton this year.
Yeah, because you're losing Kyron Hudson, who played on the outside. You're losing Kyle Ford, who played on the outside inside. So you're losing those guys who were kind of those rotational guys you could play in there. The one that comes to mind is Corey Sims, because he has, 6'3", 205 pounds. He's early enrollee, comes from a productive program at Brothers College, won a state championship. He's been a guy coming from a winning program. Again, wide receiver, you can jump in and make an impact early. He's big. They have a need for more bigger body receivers with Kyron Hudson, 6'1", Kyle Ford, 6'2", those kind of stronger guys on the outside. Corey Sims has a good opportunity to be able to contribute there. But you're right, there's no slam dunk guy outside of Prince Strawn to kind of help out on the outside. Corey Sims does have the opportunity, though, and I do like what he provides. He's a bully, was what you want out of a 6'3" guy, but he's versatile enough to play a little inside as well. So I think that's the beauty of Corey Sims, and I think he can move from outside to inside, inside to outside. So I'm excited to see what he looks like in this spring. He's one of the guys I'm going to keep my eye on, because as an early enrollee wide receiver, there is opportunity. I know Xavier Jordan, we just mentioned, had opportunity in spring last year. They had like 0 bodies, and they still weren't able to get him on the field in 2024. But Corey Sims, a little bit different because he is a bigger receiver, and they kind of need those.
I thought Eisen was bigger than he is. I didn't realize he was 5'11". I thought he profiled more as an outside guy, but it looks like Sims, to your point, Chris, maybe he plays that Kyle Ford role moving forward, doing a little bit of both. But is Eisen not that outside boundary receiver?
He can play on the outside, but I think he'll be more of a speedster guy, like 4.5.
Okay.
Like 10.5, 10.6 kind of speed. So they can play him on the outside, but yeah, I think he'll be more of an inside guy to start. Corey Sims, though, 6'3".
Yeah.
Let's go.
I didn't realize he was the tallest of the group, so he will, to your point, compete with Strawn, but he is a true freshman. Strawn is going into his third year of college football. To me, he's that logical outside receiver alongside Lane.
Let's move on to our strengths and weaknesses. Connor, what do you got as the strength of this position group?
2 guys on the roster with a chance at the Bolitnikoff Award. That's always really exciting. So the top-end talent, I think, is the biggest strength for this group. You look at what Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane did last season. The highs were really high, and while Lane wasn't as consistent as you would have liked, Lemon was fairly consistent the whole way, and he really emerged. That Rutgers game was awesome, and he just continued to get better, overcame that early injury he had against Michigan. So those are the 2 strengths, I think, because outside of those guys, there are a pretty good amount of question marks.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I wrote down one of the best duos in the country, and if everything goes right, they could be there, top 3, top 5, at least ceiling-wise for them. I know there's some other good.
They might be top 2. I think the only one you can for sure put in front of them right now is Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate at Ohio State. I was looking. Clemson has a good one. Alabama has a good one. But you could certainly make an argument for Lemon and Lane, especially if they come out and play really well early, for being that second-best duo in college football. What do we talk about, Chris, all the time? You got to get elite talent. That is elite talent. That is significant.
And I think it's crazy. Like, those were the 2 lowest rated guys in that heralded 4-man class at this time, with Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch, both 5 stars. Although I was irked that they moved Makai Lemon down from 5-star.
He should have been 5.
Yeah, should have been 5-star. I was talking with Greg Biggins with this over the weekend, because we were talking about USC's offense moving forward. But yeah, he should have been top 32. should have been top 32. No way about it. I know you watched him a lot in high school, just like I did when he was at Los Al. Just a dog, and kind of Amon-Ra Brown-esque with his route running, and they're a little bit different, but they have the same vibes in terms of their attitude and their work ethic and their playmaking ability. Makai Lemon a little bit quicker than Amon-Ra, which is saying a lot because Amon-Ra, one of the best receivers in the NFL right now. Jacoby Lane, if he, develops more, as you mentioned, with those games where he only had like 2 catches or what have you, one of them usually for a touchdown, if he could get to 5 catches, 6 catches over those 2, then yeah, you have a really special combo on hand. And those are 2 guys you just roll out every series like they're going to go make plays. Like, no doubt about it. We don't need to sit them. Again, you are worried about injury, but it's football. You got to go play your best guys.
Absolutely. So those guys will see a ton more time, which that's another strength too, because the rotation, like, it didn't make a whole lot of sense last season in some games when Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane were just, let's face it, so much better than some of those other guys. Yeah. Why were they rotating at that same level? That's a strength too. Of course, they need to stay healthy because if you lose one of them, that's a problem. Whereas last year, if you were down a receiver, it wasn't necessarily the end of the world. This upcoming year, barring something unexpected in the portal, one of those guys misses some time. That's a significant hit to your offense.
Yeah. What about strengths and weaknesses, or sorry, the weakness of this team? We already did strength. What am I doing? We're knocking these off. For me, it's thinness, depth concerns, as you mentioned. Like, what if you guys get hurt? Who's going to step up? What do you have there on the back end to fill in if some guys have to miss some time? It's kind of thin right now.
Whereas last season, even though they weren't elite guys, I think you trusted Kyle Ford. Yeah. You trusted Kyron Hudson. And I don't know after Lemon and Lane who you can say definitively here in March, oh, I trust that receiver 100%. I don't think there is a guy there. Someone's going to emerge, of course. And I'm not saying it's 2 receivers and everyone else isn't good, but they have to earn the trust of the fans. They have to earn the trust of the coaches, the players. There's a lot of unknown right now outside of those 2 guys, which is a little scary because, yes, there were too many guys playing last season, but they had earned that playing time, and you could really trust those guys. Whereas now, if Lemon or Lane isn't available for whatever reason, you have to throw someone else in the mix. Like, you hope Prince Strawn is ready. You hope Jay Fair takes a step forward. Maybe one of the freshmen gets into the mix a little bit. Maybe they add someone in the portal. But right now, who can you say 100% I trust that receiver? Outside of your top 2 guys, I don't think you can say anyone.
Right now in spring, you have 10 scholarship receivers. You have 2 more coming in, the 2 freshmen that obviously we're not going to dive into them, but Romero Eisen and Tanu Kynes will be there in the summer to give you 10. Connor, are you looking at a couple receivers in the transport after the spring? Is that feels feasible for them to kind of bolster those ranking, or excuse me, that roster number?
I think 1 for sure, and maybe 2. It will depend on the spring evaluations, like we've talked about on this series of podcasts before. Say the new personnel staff and the coaches, everyone just is really impressed with Jay Fair. He puts it together. He takes a step forward. He plays that second slot receiver role next to Makai Lemon, and he takes maybe a issue going into camp away. It's no longer an issue. Then you probably don't need to go get someone, and maybe if a young receiver who it just didn't work out at their first stop enters the portal, you can go get someone like that with high upside who you don't necessarily need to play right away. So I think it's a huge spring for Jay Fair. And then Prince Strawn, you get him in the building. If you like what he does, then you probably don't need to add a bigger body. But I do think bringing in one more guy, someone who it's going to take some time maybe to evaluate or to establish that trust if they aren't the superstar right out of the portal. But if you can bring in one more player who can contribute, that would go a long way to helping this group, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think 1 for sure is going to be coming after the spring because they just need another body in there. And I could see 2. I could easily see 2 because I think they would get someone that could, like, Jay Fair level, who has experience, that has played Power 4 college football and, can be a secondary guy for them. And then, maybe you take an upside guy, a younger guy. Remember, you missed out in that 2024 cycle with Xavier Jordan. You only got 1 guy. You wanted 3 guys. Maybe you bring in someone to supplement that class, a redshirt freshman kind of level guy that you can feel like you like and that you can develop for the future. So, yeah, I'm leaning towards 2 guys coming in to get you to 12. But, yeah, 1 for sure. I think they need more help there just to round out that roster. Final thoughts, Connor, which is kind of our early starter projection. So for your 4 top guys, when they're rolling them out there, who do you think will be the 4 top guys? We already know 2, but what does the rest of that look like for you?
In March, I think you have to go with Prince Strawn as number 3, and then Jay Fair is number 4.
Yeah.
And maybe it's Xavier Jordan pushing Jay Fair, but I think it has to be those 4 guys, and I would be pretty surprised if someone else on the roster beats out one of those guys to get into the top 4. I believe Strawn is probably more safe, if that makes sense. Like, I know he's new, and Jay Fair transferred to USC with high expectations and didn't have a great year last year, so maybe Strawn will be a repeat. But I think that the staff really likes Strawn, and I feel pretty safe in putting him as that wide receiver 3, and then Fair, Jordan behind him as that second slot guy. But that's when talking this out right now, that's when you can see like another body would be very helpful.
Yeah, this one feels too cookie cutter. It feels too good, which is kind of why I feel like you need another guy to push a little bit more. So yeah, Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, those are your 2 horses. Then you got Jay Fair, who, started in the Las Vegas Bowl, but didn't really have a ton of impact. You want more impact out of him. You need more help out of him because, look, if you're that wide receiver 3, they're going to be focused on Makai Lemon, on Jacoby Lane. You can feast as a wide receiver 3, that third option, and then Prince Strawn is that other one. That's a decent lineup. Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, another big body, and Strawn, and then Jay Fair, who's a veteran, but want to see more from him. That's not a bad foursome you're rolling out there for offense with Jada Maeva and your running backs. That's a good combo, or that's a good quartet.
It is, but I think it's fair to say, like, it would be nice to have seen a little bit more production from the 3 and 4 in your lineup. But, I mean, looking at last season, it's not like Kyle Ford and Kyron Hudson, the guys in the similar roles, had, like, lit the world on fire previously. So it's not like alarming that these guys don't have a ton of production. But, like, you just got to see him take a step forward.
Yeah, has to do it. And I'm not putting more of that. I'm putting more of that on Jay Fair than Prince Strawn because Prince Strawn, first year in this USC offense, we'll see what it looks like, coming from a run-first kind of offense. But, yeah, Jay Fair, big opportunity this spring. He's one of those guys where you're looking at, like, I think he has to have a big spring. Like, this is for him. Connor, let's move on to the final topic, which is a question that we solicit from the listeners on social media. We have one from CK Streams. Which wide receiver will break out as the true wide receiver 3 and why? We kind of talked about Prince Strawn and Jay Fair as kind of 2 candidates, and I'm going to break my rules as someone who is not part of the team yet, but Tanook Hines is someone I'm very high on, the 4-star Duquesne wide receiver they signed out of Texas. 4.4 speed, 6'1", just kind of imagine like a bigger Makai Lemon and faster Makai Lemon. That's the kind of vibe you get with Tanook Hines. Not on campus yet. I think it'll take some time, but he's a guy I think that can help right away and is explosive, is big enough to play outside, going to start out in the middle, but really good hands. I think circle him as like as a potential wide receiver 3 down the year. But I know we're starting out earlier. It's going to be an older guy to start, but Tanook Hines is a guy to know.
If USC doesn't add a receiver from the portal, doesn't that have to tell you that they're very high in their freshmen, and we probably will see at least one of them emerge into the rotation, and maybe it's Hines. For this exercise, because we're talking about the spring roster, he's not there yet, like you said, Chris, so maybe that player's Corey Sims, and he just lights the world on fire, and all of a sudden the staff evaluates the team and say, hey, why do we got to go to the portal when Corey Sims looks pretty good? So that could give us a little bit of intel into the program if they don't make a move there. I think for this answer, it's either Strawn or a player to be named later from the portal. That makes the most sense to me right now.
I would lean Strawn. Gun in my head, like.
Yeah, he's the logical guy.
He's the logical guy, and again, I just mentioned it, but like coming from a run-first offense, let's see what he could do in a pass offense. And you're getting Dennis Simmons as your new coach. Has a track record with bigger wide receivers, so we'll see what that looks like. But Prince Strawn, if I have to like not break my own rules and pick Tanook Hines, he'd be the one I'm choosing. But Jay Fair, you have the opportunity as well.
Yeah, he's sort of the guy we're overlooking right now, and that's because the production just fell off after that Michigan game from him. So He certainly has a chance to. And would I be shocked if he's the guy who emerges as that third receiver? No, but I think he has a lot of work to do.
Connor, we still have a lot of work to do with our position previews, but we have checked off another one in wide receivers. Thank you for joining me. Again, quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers have been complete. You can check those out too. Connor, anything to say before we go?
Fight on.